into the future where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So, did your parents ever do this thing to you? Did they ever play this fun word game with you? It used to drive me crazy because it was something that parents, teachers, authority figures seemed to love to roll out all the time. Whenever I assumed that I was allowed to do something, I thought it'd be cool if I stayed up and watched an extra hour of television. Oh, really? Let's talk about assumption. And then you'd see assume written on a piece of paper, and then a line drawn right after the second S, and a line drawn after the U. And they go, when you assume something, you make an ass out of you and me. Oh, how I loved hearing that quaint little homily trotted out by everyone and sundry around me. But here's the thing. It stuck with me. That little lesson from childhood. When you assume something, you make an ass out of you and me. God. It really taught me something about not jumping to conclusions. I think mostly because I wanted to avoid hearing the same lesson over and over and over and over and over again. But partially because the message got through. Don't judge a book by a cover. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't assume. And the vast majority of the world made a humongous assumption this past week just gone by that, look, I'm all in favor of equality. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know that equality is sort of like, there's a very, very firmly drawn line in the sand with me with regard to equality. Yes, every last freaking one of us should be equal. Not only because I feel it, but because there's certain relevant documentation about the founding of our country that says equality is the thing and the way to go. Anyways, this is a barrier to equality when stuff like this happens. Kevin Spacey had already filmed the movie All the Money in the World when his career went up in flames over multiple sexual assault allegations. And instead of scrapping the film altogether, they replaced him with Christopher Plummer, who, by the way, did an amazing job, and reshot all of his scenes. Director Ridley Scott said all the actors, all of them, had to come back, and they did it for free to keep costs down. Well, he lied. According to a new report, Michelle Williams came back for $1,000. Mark Wahlberg was paid $1.5 million, 1,500 times more than his female co-star. Obviously, Hollywood and the rest of the world lost their ever-loving minds over this. Jessica Chastain, Judd Apatow, Amber Tamblyn, these are among the celebrities who called it an injustice, saying, you know what, this is exactly the type of inequality we're railing against in Hollywood and all over the world. Time is up. Hashtag this. Injustice the other. Do things differently. Get it together. Women are equal. Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. This is what sets people back, because had they had a moment to look into the situation a little closer before they lost their ever-loving freaking minds, it might have gone a little bit differently. It might have been a non-issue. And with these battles, these really important battles that level the playing field and start to give us this idea of equality. I was deeply touched when Oprah Winfrey suggested maybe a girl of today will grow up to be a woman of tomorrow, and that world that she's in will be very, very different. That meant something to me. I listened to that speech over and over again. I'm not ashamed to admit that when I thought of a girl growing up today who could live in a different world with regard to equality tomorrow, I teared up a little bit. It's a beautiful sentiment. It's something that we need. But when you act in a knee-jerk reactionary way, when you don't delve in and discover the facts, when you completely destroy your own argument, when you make an ass out of you and me by assuming something, you're actually putting the fight for equality back a bit. And that's exactly what Hollywood and the rest of the world did when they lost their ever-loving minds over the fact that Mark Wahlberg got 1,500 times more than Michelle Williams to be in the reshoots for this movie. Dig a little deeper. Find out what the truth is. What was the truth? Well, here's the thing. It's what Michelle Williams agreed to. We talked about this a little bit the other day on the show when we mentioned the woman who bailed on her gig at E because she found out her male co-host got paid significantly more than she did. Well, look, if you are an insurance claims processor, an entry-level insurance claims processor, and you're a female and your male counterpart doing the exact same job is getting paid more than you, then that's not okay. That's not cool. But 9 times out of 10, in entertainment, you had an individual deal worked out with you that you agreed with. It's not like they offered Mark Wahlberg the same contract as they offered anybody else. It's an individual deal. It's not like they're entry-level actors. It's not like they... I'm sure there are things in Michelle Williams' deal that Mark Wahlberg didn't get. But the bottom line is, this is the deal that Michelle Williams agreed to. And I'm sure she got paid very handsomely for her part in that movie. She is internationally renowned as being a fantastic actress, and as such, probably commands quite the pretty penny when she decides to do a show or a movie or appear on a stage or anything of that nature. But what she agreed to nullifies this whole argument.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So like I said, the world lost its mind when they found out that Michelle Williams was paid 1,500 times less than Mark Wahlberg for the reshoot of the movie All the Money in the World. Jessica Chastain said, "Please go see Michelle's performance in All the Money in the World. She's a brilliant Oscar-nominated Golden Globe-winning actress. She has been in the industry for 20 years. She deserves more than 1% of her male co-star's salary." Judd Apatow said, "This is so messed up that it's almost hard to believe. Almost. This is how this business works. I wonder if the studio or Wahlberg will do something to make the situation less insane." Now, look, the bottom line is the situation is not that insane if you take a step back. The situation is one that Michelle Williams agreed to. Michelle Williams is all the things that Jessica Chastain said she is. Very talented, lauded, someone who I'm sure commands a pretty penny when it comes to appearing in movies. In the world of show business, your value is dictated by how easily you would be to replace. And I'm sure that Michelle Williams would be very difficult to replace in this situation, if not impossible. I mean, it was a bummer enough replacing Kevin Spacey for the studio, I'm sure. It took a lot of heavy lifting to get the movie done. But here's the deal. The outrage, which coursed throughout the world, was a little bit misplaced. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. It had to do with their individual contracts. Mark Wahlberg made $1.5 million for extensive reshoots of the film. Michelle Williams received about $1,000. But here's the thing. She actually wasn't paid at all. She wasn't paid 1 red cent of salary. That was a per diem. That was for like sandwiches and stuff. That was for your daily expenses. You get an $80 per diem a day. The same $80 per diem that she was getting while she was shooting the movie. Her contract required her to do any necessary reshoots. And this is how negotiations go. On a much smaller scale, I am aware of this. I'm on a bunch of different radio stations. And when it came time to renegotiate my contract, there was this thing there that said, we reserve the right to put you on X number of radio stations without compensating you any extra. And I was like, that won't fly. And I went to my negotiator, my agent, and said, I don't want to work for free. Like, I don't want to do extra work for free here. And they're like, no, we'll take that out. We'll change that. We'll make sure that if you do additional work, you're going to be compensated. Now, understand, we're talking about pennies on the dollar, but pennies to me are what make the world go round. You take care of the pennies and the rest of the world will look after itself. But that was in my contract. And it had nothing to do with what a female coworker was offered in her contract. It had nothing to do with what other coworkers were offered in their contracts. That was an agreement between me and the company that employs me. And of course, they're going to try. That's what you try and do. You try and get the best deal when you're negotiating. You're trying to get the most value for as little money as possible. And you know what? When I said, okay, I want that taken out and you're going to have to pay me for that sort of stuff, they said, oh, right then. But, you know, for these extra stations that we want you to do, you got to be on for 6 days instead of 5 days a week. I was like, all right, done. Fine. So there's this back and forth. And I'm sure Michelle Williams was paid a pretty penny to be in this movie. She's got all the qualifications. She's got the audience. She's got the skills. She is a tremendous actress. And when it came time to do the deal, it was an all-in thing. Okay, we're going to pay you this much money, but that covers everything. If we got to bring you back and do reshoots, then you're going to have to, that's on you, not on us. All right, cool. She signed away. I am, of course, using a certain amount of speculation as to the vernacular of the negotiations, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that it was something of that nature. Now, Mark Wahlberg, when he was negotiating, probably struck a different deal. If you need me to come back, you're going to have to pay me. That's important to me. And so they did an individual agreement with him. It's not like these are two employees that entered into a company doing the exact same job under the exact same circumstances, and there's a 1,500% disparagement between the amounts they're getting paid. And so when the world loses its mind over stuff like this, well, it's a little sad to me because equality is important. Equality is something we're moving toward. Equality is something that we haven't had. This shouldn't be our problem. This should have been our grandfather's problems and our grandmother's problems. Our this should have been Abraham Lincoln's problem. It should have ended there. After that, we all should have been freaking equal. There was enough bloodshed that went into the idea of equality when Abraham Lincoln was president that this shouldn't be something we have to trifle with anymore. It's beneath us that there is any kind of inequality in America today. It is sacrilegious. It is absolutely opposite to the tenets upon which America was based, that there is inequality. But when people lose their minds over stuff like this and start screaming and yelling that the world is an unfair place, what it does is it decimates other much more valuable and sensible and relevant and necessary arguments. The more of these, the more assumptions are made, the more people are going to make an ass out of you and me. It's so important to read past the headline. It is so important to know what you're talking about before you manufacture some outrage and hit Twitter. It's just not okay because it sets us back, and we don't want to be set back. Like I said, it's beneath us that there is not equality in America right now. And the more things like this that happen, the longer it is going to take us to get there.
Money making, skills on the mic, can be paid every day, and for part of the battle, just bow down, better act what you know.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of yous, guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
So equality, it's an important thing. It's something that has dominated so much of the conversation here and all over the world, especially in America, over the last several months. And, well, look, we've just dealt with the Michelle Williams, Mark Wahlberg situation. Let's talk for a second about the idea of female nudity. Travis, go lightly. If a man is allowed to walk around the streets with his shirt off, should a woman be allowed to walk around the streets with her shirt off?
In my opinion, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't look. Am I lying? I would be distracted. I might drive dangerously if the sidewalks were filled with topless women. That would take a mental adjustment. Like, just because you're just so not. I mean, first and foremost, guys are not anywhere near as attractive as females with their clothes off. So for that reason, a shirtless guy walking around doesn't create the hubbub that a shirtless woman does, I think. Now, you feel free to disagree with me on this one. It's obviously down to personal taste, but like I said, it would take an adjustment period for me to be able to go through my day if there were topless women walking down the streets. But it is legal in New York. It's legal in New York. You know, there's a topless book club in New York City. Have you heard about this, Travis?
I have not, and I'm not a reader, but I think I could become one.
Right? Yeah. There's
I
a
say
topless.
That respectfully, by the way.
Right. Yes, there's a topless book club in New York City, and it's basically a bunch of women who gather topless in Central Park in New York City and do what one usually does at a book club. They read, they discuss the books, they have intellectually stimulating conversations about the books that they're reading, and they do it all without the benefit of clothing on their upper half. Yep, that's the thing, because it's legal in New York City. The Topless Book Club. I would love to join. I would especially love to join during Braille Week. But
oh my God.
Nevertheless, there's this idea that female nudity could potentially be empowering. Here is Michelle Wolf to talk about it.
I think people think we're moving forward, like women are moving forward, we're making progress, and I'm like, is that progress? Like Sports Illustrated will put a plus-size model on their swimsuit issue, and a lot of women will be like, bravo, Sports Illustrated. You're so innovative. That's not innovative. They just finally realized that men will also to fat women. You want to be innovative? Put a completely clothed woman in there and just talk about her personality. Like, this is Rhonda. She loves quilting. Let's get into the detail. Even women would be like, I don't want to read that. And there's this whole wave of women right now that we're showing that we're confident by posting naked or almost naked pictures online. Being like, I don't care what you think about my body. I'm confident. Please like and subscribe. And it feels anti-feminist to be like, don't post that. But at the same time, I don't know what our goal is here. Like, I think there's other ways to show that you're confident. Like, I don't think Ruth Bader Ginsburg's ever been like, I gotta get out of this robe and show people what I'm really about. Plus, I know you're all dying to see this little bird body.
Freaking genius. Michelle Wolf, everybody. You ever seen it? You ever seen public nudity in places where it's legal, Travis?
I don't think that I have. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever been on a nude beach. I've never been to Europe. I've been to Mexico, but it was not a nude beach. So, yes, I have. Yes, I have. On the river, on the San Jacinto River in Houston. Yes, I was on a boat, and there was some toplessness on another boat.
Was it legally sanctioned nudity? You were a boat cop for a little while. What you saw on the San Jacinto River, was this when you were a boat cop? Did you have to arrest somebody for nudity?
No, I did not. I did not. And it's funny because
Did you have to have an awkward man, please put those away conversation? No. This is just a warning? I'm issuing a warning?
I didn't, and it's funny because I asked specifically. I said, I'm not trying to be that guy, but is it legal, for people to have their tops off, for women to have their tops off and, be getting some sun? And the way it was worded to me was, well, do you have a complainant? And I said, no, I don't. And they said, well, then it's, if you don't have a complainant, there's no crime. I don't know if it's technically legal or not. Yeah, but again, there was a situation, you had nobody that was complaining about it, nobody was offended by it. Could it be covered under disorderly conduct if it offended somebody? Yeah, I would imagine it could. But luckily for me, nobody was offended. And an officer can't be offended by it. So, that was out the door as well. So,
really? You've got to, as a cop, you had to remain completely neutral? Like, you couldn't say, that offends me, and therefore I'm calling it in to myself?
Exactly. No, you could not be the complainant because you're the officer. You had to be objective. So, yeah, no,
wow.
You were not the one that was going to be offended.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't realize that's an interesting way in which that you as a cop were the embodiment of the law. I didn't realize you had to be equanimous with the whole situation as well. I thought personal opinion could enter into it. Wow, I just learned something new about being a cop today. That's interesting stuff. I remember the first. I remember the first time. Go on, please.
Oh, right after I say something, I'm like, I really hope that's right. It always seemed right. I hope that's right. It's one of those things. It's funny because you ask, officer, a lot of the times you'll ask an officer, hey, is this against the law? And an officer will look at you if it's just something petty, and they're like, look, kid, I would never write somebody for that, so I have no idea. That seems too petty to me. I would never go after somebody for that one. It's just how it works. It's funny.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it was explained to me when I first got to America, when we were going on tour, when my band came over from England and we were going on tour. My tour manager said, you got to understand something. You might know what the law is. You might have an idea what the law is. You might have an idea of your rights and what you can and cannot do and whether or not you can be on your way and all of the above. What you have to bear in mind is when a cop stops us, and they will because we're a tour bus or we're a van at the time, you got to know that the cop is literally the embodiment of the law where they are. And we're going to be going from state to state where everything changes. So don't try and get clever with local law enforcement. It will not help. So just, agree with everything the cop says because they are literally the embodiment of the law. And that was the first thing I learned about cops in America. I was like, okay, where they are literally the embodiment of the law. And I've always gone with that. The other thing I learned was a cute little homily is you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. Meaning, if they decide to take you in, you're going in. And they may have to let you go and say, I'm sorry later. But if you don't go in, you're going to be causing all sorts of problems for everyone. But that was my understanding of the law. I remember
it's terrible.
Growing up in England, I'm not sure if topless sunbathing was legal or not, but I do think that I know for a fact that it was in other parts of Europe. I think maybe English people are just sort of like pale, pasty, and self-conscious the way I am. I totally relate to this. That whole, why would anybody want to see that? But in Europe, people don't care, and it's legal. So being topless is legal. Being an old man that is excessively tan, excessively hairy, that hangs out by the pool in a Speedo all day is legal as well. It shouldn't be, but it is. Man, the pool where I live, like if I ever see an older dude in a Speedo, I know I'm just waiting for them to speak and be like, on or whatever French it is, or Italian or Spanish, or like Italy, France, Spain, nudity, not a problem. Go for
shame.
it.
No shame whatsoever.
Do whatever you want, and it's completely legal. But I remember the first time I ever saw somebody topless in New York and went, "Oh, that's legal now." And it was funny because I was with a girl that I was dating at the time, and her friend, and we all went to the beach as people do. And her friend went, "Oh, great! I love to swim," and took off her top and dove in. As was her legal right to do in the state of New York. And I'm with a girl that I'm dating, and her friend strips off, and I'm just like, what do I do? Like, what's the coolest way to play this? Do I conspicuously try and look away, or is that drawing attention to the fact that I'm not looking, or do I just focus on the eyes at all time? And when she comes out of the water, what do I do? Do I look at her, or do I, look at a bird, or do I have a very focused conversation with a girl I'm dating? It was awkward. But when it happened, I was like, look what she did in my mind. And then I was like, oh, guess that's legal. Okay. Thanks for that. And it was an unbelievably awkward situation.
Oh my God. It reminds me of the Seinfeld, the Hamptons episode where, was it Jerry's girlfriend that he had never seen her topless? And he wasn't there yet? Yeah.
Yeah.
They end up getting the show as she comes in from swimming topless. That's exactly what it reminds me of.
Oh, what was the Buzz Aldrin line about being the first man to walk on the moon? Like, I turn around, I take a second for a sip of Tang, and you cut in front of me, or something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God.
The fact that they use the expression "sip of Tang" just made it.
I know. The Hamptons is one of my favorite episodes of Seinfeld. I absolutely love that episode. So when you're sitting there describing it, you just, oh my God, like I'm seeing it in my head. Like,
it's got everything. I mean, that is, of course, the classic episode with the idea of shrinkage in it. Like,
yes.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing because, like, you can go to literally anyone pretty much in the world and go, I was in the pool, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Oh my God.
I want you to know that things might look like they're not all they're supposed to be, but they're all that and more, baby.
Oh my God, such a great episode. God, I love Seinfeld.
So unbelievably awesome. Oh my gosh. All right. So, quick update from yesterday. What the hell is going on? Look, we updated our horrifying celebrity sex monster scorecards yesterday. James Franco, Stan Lee. Who was the other one? Oh, Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas did this thing where he tried to get out in front of it. He was like, you're going to hear about stuff I was doing roughly 30 years ago in the 80s. And I got to tell you this.
Specific.
Yes. I was definitely not showing my junk to a woman who's going to say that she saw my junk in an unwanted manner in about a week and a half. That definitely did not happen. On this date, at this time, I was not junk showing. That was not what Michael Douglas was doing, which makes it sound a whole lot like that is exactly what he was doing. Yeah, it's that weird thing. Stan Lee was another situation where he was accused by nurses, and I kind of like what happened with Stan Lee's situation because, well, his lawyers got out in front of it and went, nope, absolutely not. Incorrect. This did not happen. This is an extortion attempt. Not even going to entertain this. And I think that's good because the pendulum needs to swing back just a little bit because absolutely women need to be able, and men that deal with sexual misconduct need to be able to tell their stories and be able to alert authorities and be able to alert work superiors and not be worried about holding on to their jobs. The climate needs to change in that respect. And I think the climate has changed tremendously over the last several weeks and months. But at the same time, a person that's something that can be abused by someone with malicious intent. So somebody absolutely has to be given the benefit of the doubt. Someone has to be innocent until proven guilty or until there's enough compelling evidence to where this might be true. And Stan Lee's lawyer is taking a line in the sand being like, nope, you back that stuff down right now. We're going to fight this because this is absolutely untrue. Now, if 20 other allegations of Stan Lee being wildly inappropriate to female healthcare workers, which I think the story was all about, his nurses, if a whole bunch of stories come out about this sometime soon, then, well, that's going to cause significant more amounts of suspicion. That's more smoke, and where there's a certain amount of smoke, there's almost bound to be a certain amount of fire. But for now, I really like that he shut it down in its tracks. James Franco was the other one. The story was that there was someone who worked with him or an actress or something of that nature who wanted to, I guess, have a career in film. And James Franco said, all right, get naked for $100. Here's $100. You got to get naked. And because she felt as though this was a person who could make or break her career, she felt obligated to do it. So that was the complaint. Now, we talked a little bit yesterday about James Franco. And if you're like me, you've enjoyed his work. You think he's funny, but he's always seemed a scotch sleazy. Like, James Franco has the vibe of a guy that you wouldn't introduce to your sister under any circumstances as much as you wanted to bro down with him. That's his public persona. He did that incredibly creepy thing where a bunch of his Instagram posts with him flirting back and forth with an underage girl, setting up a meetup for sex, were made public, and it turned out it was all part of a marketing ploy for a movie. It was a big con, but it's a weird-ass con to take part in, and James Franco had no problem taking part in it. Anyways, we've got some new news about James Franco, don't we, Travis Golightly, that we'll discuss next.
We do.
Is it creepy and disturbing?
It's exactly what we thought it was. He's not been so lucky with clearing his name yet.
Oh, okay. We'll do that directly ahead.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio. 104.1.
More AD on the radio.
Isn't it kind of incredible how, I don't want to call it social justice because that sort of cheapens it. These are very real and relevant issues that we're talking about. Racial equality, equality of the sexes, all of the above. These are real and important issues. But it's interesting how these things seem to have a flavor of the month quality to them, and then they go away. And really, they shouldn't go away. If you're principled about this sort of thing, you should continue to fight over it. You should continue to fight for what you think is right. Do you remember a little while back the idea of changing the name of the Washington Redskins to something else? Travis Golightly, you remember that story?
I do, yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah, and the Redskins are still the Redskins, and you kind of don't hear about it anymore. And I don't know if people gave up or went away, but, if you truly believe that this is a racially charged thing, if it's a racially insensitive thing, if it's an offensive thing to people with a Native American heritage, it doesn't mean you stop fighting for it when it goes out of style. But it's amazing how that seems to be the case. Do you remember, same deal with the Atlanta Braves? Do you remember that? You ever seen Atlanta Braves fans do that tomahawk chop thing that a lot of people find deeply offensive? Yeah, here's Brian Regan talking about it.
I love doing this, man. I get to travel. I was just in Atlanta, went to a Braves game. You know all the controversy about team nicknames and mascots and stuff? It was weird. I was in the stands at the Braves game and everybody was going, bunch of overweight white people. Give me another big gulp and a third foot long. Should we be doing this? This feels inappropriate somehow. I don't think they meant anything by it, but same thing when I was in Toronto at the Blue Jays game and their fans were going. I don't think they meant anything by it. They were playing the Orioles. It was fan chirp-off night. It was getting ugly.
The great Brian Regan. All right, Travis Golightly. So we've been talking a little bit about James Franco. He is the latest person to be accused of sexual misconduct, along with Michael Douglas and Stan Lee, the man that created Spider-Man. What do we know about this? What's the development in this story, in this situation?
So it's increased to 5 women now accusing him of inappropriate or sexually exploitative behavior. It's a mix of who they are. 4 were students of his at a film school that he founded. The other says that he was her mentor. Basically, what it has to do with one of his students, it basically has to do with
that's kind
him.
of Cosby-esque, want a little career advice, I think the advice I'd like for you to take is to look at my junk. Look at it. I'm going to drop the robe now.
Yes, and that's what it kind of ended up being. Like, so they're claiming that he took them under his wings and that he would, in this film school, essentially tell them that, you know what, I hold positions open in my movies that I save for people who are going here because I want to try and, get them in the door and all this stuff. One of them, like, the claims are just perverted and weird. One lady says that there was like a group sexy time scene that she filmed with him and several other women 3 years ago. And I guess the women had protective plastic guards covering their nethers.
Really? They do that? Huh.
Well, apparently in this situation, and she claims that he removed the guards and started acting out different acts on the girls.
That doesn't sound like work. Okay.
No,
all right, intern. First, it's very important that you learn the craft of acting like you're participating in a naked orgy. Great.
Exactly.
That does sound suspect. How's James Franco's school going, honey? Oh, it's good. What are you learning? Well, today we studied nude orgies. That sounds sketchy as hell. What else?
Well, all of them seem to have this kind of feel. 2 other students recalled this shoot at a strip club type deal. And halfway through filming, they were wearing like lingerie and masks and stuff. And halfway through filming, he walks up and says, "So who wants to take your shirt off?" And like everyone just looked at him like, "You got to be kidding!" And he got all mad and stormed off. So that's another one.
That's I mean, this is the thing. Like, you've never met her or talked to her, I don't think. But Brandy Aniston, who is an adult film superstar, was also our intern on the show, but in a much more legitimate sort of way than it sounds like Franco does. I mean, first and foremost, when we have adult entertainers on this show, I refuse to play that, "Oh, what are you wearing?" type of thing. Like, you're going to hang out and you're going to talk, and we're going to talk
you don't
like
want to be creepy
people.
guy while you're talking to him.
Well, not being creepy guy in real life, I don't think I want to be creepy guy for entertainment's sake on the radio. And then the other thing is, Brandy was our intern, and it was kind of a bummer sometimes to be like, "Oh yeah, Brandy Aniston, the adult superstar, she's our intern." Oh, really? But she was going to college for broadcasting. She, does what she does in the world of adult entertainment, but she also had her own show on, I think, the Vivid channel on Sirius XM, and decided she really liked radio. So she was like, I don't want to do this forever, and I think broadcasting might be something that I could do afterwards. So she went to college, studied broadcasting, got an internship at Premier Radio Networks, and became our intern. And she was really, really good on the air, and hopefully we'll have her back sometime soon, because she's a great radio personality and always an absolute hoot and a pleasure to hang out with. But one of the things that we talked about was the idea of sexual harassment on the sets of adult films. And it was really, really sort of fascinating stuff. How much time do we have in this segment, Travis? Sorry, I forget about these things.
About a minute 20.
About a minute 20. So
Give or take
when we were
second.
talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, I said, "Brandy, you work in a very different world than any of us." And she was like, "Actually, it is so clearly defined what you can and cannot do on a porn set. The larger the company that you're working for, the more in triplicate you're going to have to sign all the do's and do nots. And do you understand what is socially acceptable? Do you understand what's professionally acceptable? You may do this, this, and this while the cameras are rolling, but the moment the cameras stop, you may not do any of that stuff. Don't kid yourself." And the reason why it's so clearly defined in that situation is because it has to be to avoid any kind of misunderstanding or any kind of getting sued. So they have very rigidly, clearly defined do's and do nots in the world of adult entertainment. And they probably, I would imagine, to the same extent, would have something like that in a professional film setting. And if James Franco is part of a professional shoot at a strip club, walks in and goes, "Who wants to take your shirt off?" and then gets mad and storms out when no one volunteers, that is the exact opposite of anything that vaguely approaches professional. So, look, we don't know. We weren't there. But like I said, where there's a certain amount of smoke, there's probably going to be a little bit of fire, and it's getting toasty up in James Franco's place.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So, as more and more of Hollywood, as more and more beloved entertainers that have created things that we've treasured for our entire lives are outed as horrifying Hollywood sex monsters, I think we've developed a method of identifying what we feel is possibly real and what we feel needs a little bit of further examination, or at least I have. And that is, when I hear about one thing, I'm like, all right, if they're this type of person, there's going to be some more stuff that comes out. If this is true, we're going to hear numerous other complaints. Like with Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons had that thing where a girl accused him of sexual assault. And he went, "No, sorry. Look, if I was dismissive of you as a person, if I was careless in the emotional side of our relationship, I apologize. I've been that way in the past, and I definitely have some making up to do in that respect to many other people. But I remember the night that you're talking about, and I remember it was completely consensual. Save it." No. I won't be a part of this. And then 5, 6, 7 other women came out with accusations, and I went, okay, all right. Oh, man, this guy gave us Run DMC. This guy gave us a Beastie Boys. This is a hard one to take, but I've even read some of his books because I find him to be kind of an interesting dude, but I'm side-eyeing that a lot now, and I don't know if I could go back and read his books and feel it the same way, or if he came out with a new book, I could dive into it with the same sort of, oh boy, a new Russell Simmons book, that's kind of cool. But James Franco, similar situation, was accused by one person, then a litany of other accusations came out. What were the other ones? What were the other ones, Travis? We talked about the one who said that, okay, today, you, my student at the James Franco School of Acting, we're going to learn how to act in a nude orgy. And then he removed the protective plastic guards covering people's nether regions and kind of just went for it. And then there was a situation where there was a shoot at a strip club. He walked into the filming and said, who wants to take your shirt off? No one volunteered, and he got all angry about it. What else?
Another former student said that he would always make everybody think that there were possible roles on the table if they were going to perform sex acts or take off their shirts. See, so there's a reoccurring theme here. Mm-hmm. She said that for years she received these mass email requests from Franco to audition for role-playing parts, either as a prostitute or a hooker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's awkward. And then the last one is similar, and it's creepy, but it goes a little bit farther, and it's kind of one of those things. This girl met him. I guess this is the one that he was the mentor, and they kind of ended up in a relationship. She met him in early 2016 and said that he had been willing to give her notes on a script that she was writing, I guess, or some script that she was dealing with. And they got into a relationship, and then in the relationship, they hadn't done a certain sex act before, and he pressured her into performing this act on him while they were sitting in a car. She said, I was talking to him, all of a sudden, his penis was out, and I got really nervous and said, can we do this later? And I guess he was a little forceful about what he wanted, and she didn't want him to hate her. Yeah, so she says she did it. She says that they would go on to advance their consensual relationship past that, but looking back, she feels sick about it. She said that she emailed him after the Harvey Weinstein stuff came out and told him how much that she did not appreciate what he did to her, and that he ended up calling her and talking to her and apologizing. So yeah, so that's the one that's even a little farther.
You know, it's really sad and really creepy and really disgusting, but mostly just tremendously sad. That which she described. She was in a relationship with him. He wanted her to do something. She wasn't so keen on it, and he forced it on her. And they kind of, allegedly, assuming all of this is true. Forget it's James Franco and the accuser. Let's just say this is any guy and a girl in a relationship. You're in a relationship, guy wants something, girl not so keen on it, guy says you're doing it anyway, just go with it. Go with it. And she goes with it, and they continue to have a relationship. And it's this mixed bag of emotions. Relationships really sort of like carbonate your hormones and your sense of right and wrong. But I would imagine that, look, to me, reading that on paper, that sounds like sexual assault. That's what that sounds like
creepy.
to me.
It's really creepy.
And the sad part is, I would bet that, I don't know, I hate to assign a number to it, but I would bet that so many females have had an experience not unlike that one, where they were forced into doing something that they didn't want to do. With someone maybe that they were in a relationship with or hooking up with, and they just decided it was easier to do it, or they were scared so they did it, or they loved them so they went ahead and did it. But the bottom line is that, to me, reads like sexual assault. And I think this woman saying that, hey, when the stuff came out about Harvey Weinstein, it made me think about that again, and I went back and I wrote him and said that wasn't cool and what you did was not all right. I bet that every woman listening to this right now, if she goes back through her catalog of sexual experiences, has something similar to that in it, where she was forced into doing something that she didn't want, and at the time didn't necessarily register it as being something that qualified as assault or rape or something of that nature. But that, like I said, is a tremendously sad thing to me. What else? What else about Franco?
That's pretty much it. His agent or attorney or whoever is saying, you know what, it's his attorney. He says none of this is true. He says there's plenty of people who were students of Franco's who had incredibly positive experiences, and that many of the women who are accusing him have also expressed positive experiences on social media. So he says, you know what, this is not true. None of this is true. They are defending themselves. Who knows? We'll see if the number rises above 5. That's the interesting thing.
Well, here's the thing. These two qualities are not mutually exclusive. You could have had a positive... Right, James Franco is a talented guy. He's a guy with connections. He's a guy that probably was able to give some people a leg up in their acting career. But these two things can exist simultaneously. You could have a positive experience as an actor in an acting school and still be violated by your teacher. It doesn't matter. One does not preclude the other. So it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. Travis Golightly, you have had... If you had to count, how many jobs have you had? Just run them down super quick. When I met you, you'd said before you started in radio, you were driving what you called the beep beep cart at the airport.
I did. Okay, so let's see. I started life as a network administrator. Left that, and I'm trying to think. I think I was just bored, and I got a job at Pacific Sunwear. It didn't last long because I didn't realize you'd have to fold clothes, and I hate folding clothes. Oh. And, yeah. I think after that I got a job.
Who else here just rolls their T-shirts up to prevent them getting wrinkled? Can I get an amen? Can I get a hallelujah? I don't know how to. I still, as many years as I've been on this earth, I don't actually know the proper way to fold anything. No. So I feel you on that one. What else did you do?
Oh, my God. I think after that I drove the beep beep cart at the airport, the little golf cart that drives around on the concourse, like shuttling people around. I think I did that, and then I think there was a job after that, but I don't remember it. Then I think I eased my way into radio, and then I left there and became I did networking again. I was a network administrator again after that, and then became a police dispatcher, and then a police officer, and then air traffic controller, and then a locomotive conductor, and then an engineer. And now I'm working as a able seaman on a tugboat. Right. So I've had one or two.
Yeah. The reason I bring this up is because the jobs that make us the happiest have been determined, and the jobs that make us the most miserable have been determined. Out of all the things that you did, what was the one that made you the happiest, and what was the one that made you the least happy? Or the most miserable?
I hate to say it. I may not have an answer for you. People ask me all the time, like when they know my job history, they're like, what was your favorite? And I always tell them they're all my favorite because I've loved them all. I've been so lucky. Truthfully, I think radio. Radio was probably my favorite job.
It is fun. It is a lot of fun. Like doing this is a lot. Like the hours are brutal. The amount of work that you're expected to do is brutal. So much more than when you got out of it, Travis. Like the workload just has increased exponentially ever since you left, and that does suck some of the joy out of it. But like, this is fun. This is a lot of fun. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of pressure. It's an unbelievably competitive field, but it's a lot of fun. But for the entirety of the world, we'll discuss the 5 jobs that make humans the happiest a little later on in the show after we do the news. What's going on in the world, Travis Golightly?
Steve Bannon is out at Breitbart.
Yeah. He's kind of persona non grata all of a sudden. Oh, well. President Trump is calling him Sloppy Steve. He's no longer the head honcho in charge at Breitbart. He was a guy that wielded all this incredible political power for years and years and years. And now it's just like he's sort of in the wind. He's drifting. Nobody knows what he's going to do next, but he's a resilient dude. He'll bounce back. At least he's still got his side hustle working at birthday parties as Sloth from the Goonies.
Oh, my God.
Go on.
Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos is now the richest person on Earth. A net worth of over $105 billion.
Billion dollars. You know who hates him?
Who?
Trump. He's the latest person that Trump is going after. He was what did he do?
Really?
Yeah. So he said that Bezos and Amazon were exploiting.
Yes.
Exploiting the post office.
Yes, and, that's true.
I mean, the amount of business that Amazon brings the post office, I'm sure he's got a bulk deal going with them where they get cut some sort of rate. I mean, like all that free one-day shipping stuff, that has to come from somewhere. So, like, I'm sure he gets some sort of deal out of the post office that is pennies on the dollar. And I think Donald Trump accused him of exploiting the post office. And also, Bezos runs, I think he owns the Washington Post. And Bezos is not a fan of Donald Trump. And the Washington Post reflects Bezos' view of Donald Trump. So I think, you know what it is? I think it's a gazillionaire urinating contest is what I think it is. Like the idea that this came out, like Jeff Bezos is the richest person on earth with a net worth over $105 billion. He's the richest person in history now. And now Donald Trump goes after him. I think it's just like, oh man, okay. All right. I'll stick it to you somehow. Go on.
Okay. A Japanese astronaut revealed that he grew 3.5 inches in space.
Oh, there you go. In tomorrow's headlines, NASA is eagerly welcoming their newest volunteer, Kevin Hart. It's funny because he's short. That would make sense. Growing 3.5 inches in space. I mean, not being compressed by gravity doesn't don't we shrink like a certain amount every year from the age of like 50 or something like that? Like
so.
We've got less cartilage, we've got less connective tissue, gravity takes its toll on our spine, and we get shorter and shorter and shorter. Well, you remove the effects of gravity, and all of a sudden you're 3.5 inches taller. Go for it. Wow, that's impressive stuff. Hey, I guess we should. I wasn't very much news, but I want to cover this thing about what makes us happy and what makes us sad professionally. Shall we do that, Travis?
Yes, sir.
See, you say your happiest job ever was a job in radio. That's the happiest you've ever been professionally. Well, a job in Hollywood or the music industry, and this is kind of in line with what you're saying, might sound like a lot of fun, but would it really make you happy? Well, don't think too hard about it, because apparently the answer is yes. A new study surveyed people in a bunch of different industries to find out which jobs make us the happiest, and the three of the top 5 are kind of glamorous jobs that come with at least some level of fame. The 5 jobs with the highest satisfaction rate are, what do you think? Have a guess.
I would, a singer in a band, maybe?
That wasn't on there. Video game producer in at number 1. Film director in at number 2. Music producer in at number 3. Comedian in at number 4, which is surprising to me because I'm friends with a lot of comedians and they love what they do, but they don't seem like the happiest folk.
No,
there's a certain amount. There's one or two that manage to slither through and have careers in comedy, like the Andy Sambergs of this world seem to be well-adjusted and like themselves. Like the self-hatred is not necessarily for them to get the ha-has and the hee-hees out of the audience, but it seems to be part of the genetic makeup of most comics that I know. Some form of self-hatred is imperative when you're trying to make people laugh for a living. And the final one is something that you actually considered being at one point, Travis, neurosurgeon.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it seems like they should have put successful in front of a few of those, though. I mean, like unsuccessful comedian, unsuccessful music producer, unsuccessful film director begging people to watch your clip on YouTube. This doesn't sound like good times to me. But, and like I said, since when have comedians been happy? But those are the happiest professions. Video game producer, film director, music producer, comedian, and neurosurgeon. Unfortunately, the 5 jobs that make us the most miserable are a lot more common. Stock clerk, cashier, janitor, telemarketer, and machine feeder at a factory. A study also looked at which states are most satisfied with their jobs. Which state do you think is most satisfied with their profession, Travis?
The state like in the United States?
Yeah.
Florida?
Hawaii.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think if you move to Hawaii, you're pretty much happy doing anything. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll be back tomorrow. Oh, no. Tomorrow's Friday. We'll be back on Monday. We'll do it all over again later. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, sir.